I never thought I'd be making a video like this. For years, I told myself that a story like this only happens in bad movies or, well, on YouTube. But life has a funny way of throwing a curveball when you think you've got everything figured out. For the longest time, I was convinced I had it all. A great career as an architect, a supportive family, and a relationship that felt like it was plucked right out of a fairy tale. Her name was Sarah. We were together for 3 beautiful, unforgettable years, and I was completely, utterly in love with her. I can still close my eyes and remember the small, perfect moments that made up our life together. The way she'd scrunch her nose when she laughed, the specific scent of her favorite floral perfume that used to linger on my shirts. I remember the time we got lost on a road trip, and instead of getting frustrated, we just pulled over and spent the evening watching the stars. We were the kind of couple who could spend hours just talking, lying on the couch with the TV off, sharing our deepest fears and wildest dreams. We had dreams, big ones. We planned to move into a bigger place, maybe even travel for a year before we settled down. I was so sure of us that the thought of losing her never once crossed my mind. That blind faith, that unwavering certainty was exactly what made her plan so brutally effective. The distance started slowly, a barely perceptible shift that I, in my naive bliss, completely missed. It wasn't a sudden storm, but a slow, creeping fog that settled between us. The daily check-in calls that used to last for an hour dwindled to hurried 5-minute conversations. Her voice, which was once filled with warmth and excitement for my day, became flat, almost monotone. I'd ask her about her day, and she'd give one-word answers, a stark contrast to the way she used to share every detail, every funny anecdote about her colleagues or a new restaurant she'd tried. I'd ask her if everything was okay, if something was bothering her, and she would tell me in a dismissive tone that I was just being oversensitive and that everything was fine. I was an idiot. I believed her. I remember this one Friday evening. We had planned to have dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. We'd been talking about it all week. I was so excited. I spent the whole afternoon cleaning my apartment, getting dressed, and even practiced a few jokes I'd heard. I called her at 6 p.m. to confirm, and she didn't pick up. I called again, and it went straight to voicemail. At 7 p.m., I got a text. The text told me that she was exhausted and had already eaten. She also mentioned that I should just go watch a movie or something. No apology. No offer to reschedule. Just a curt, impersonal dismissal. My heart sank. I tried to tell myself it was just a bad week, that she was stressed from work. I cooked dinner for myself that night, and the apartment felt achingly silent and empty. It was the first time I felt truly alone since we'd started dating. The distance grew not just physically, but emotionally. I started to feel this constant low-level anxiety. I would find myself checking my phone every 5 minutes, hoping for a text from her, any sign that she was still there. Our conversations, when they happened, were like navigating a minefield. I was terrified of saying the wrong thing, of asking a question that would make her pull away further. I noticed that when we were together, her body language had completely changed. She would turn away from me on the couch, her shoulders hunched. Her eye contact was fleeting. It was like she was physically trying to put up a wall between us. I would reach for her hand and she'd pull away, telling me something about being hot. My touch, which once seemed to be the most comforting thing in the world to her, now felt like an intrusion. The emotional toll on me was immense. I started having trouble sleeping. I would lie awake for hours, replaying our last conversation in my head, trying to pinpoint where I had gone wrong. I would ask myself, did I forget something important? Did I say something to offend her? What was it about me that was suddenly so unappealing to the person who I thought loved me more than anyone in the world? My self-worth began to erode, slowly but surely, as I started to believe that her coldness was my fault. I became a ghost in my own relationship, constantly seeking validation from a person who had stopped giving it, a person who, unbeknownst to me, had never intended to give it in the first place. The silence between us, the silent treatment she was giving me, became louder than any argument we had ever had. And that was just the beginning of her brutal game. Her psychological games escalated from simple distance to a more active form of emotional abuse. Every time I brought up how her behavior was affecting me, she would twist my words and make me feel like I was the problem. We met for lunch one afternoon, one of the few times she agreed to a face-to-face meeting. I told her, as calmly as I could, that I felt like I was losing her and that I was worried about us. Her response was chilling. She looked at me with an air of superiority and told me, "You know, Jake, You're always so dramatic. It's really exhausting. She said I needed to relax and stop being so needy. She insisted that I was manufacturing problems out of thin air and that our relationship was perfectly fine. I left that lunch feeling completely insane. Had I imagined the distance? Was I truly being overly emotional? She made me question my own sanity, my own reality. It was a vicious cycle. She would pull away, I would feel hurt. And when I expressed my hurt, she would invalidate my feelings and make me feel like I was the one with the issue. The final insult in this stage came with my father's birthday. I had asked her to come with me to his party, something she had always enjoyed. For weeks, she gave me vague answers, telling me she would see how she felt. On the day of the party, a few hours before we were supposed to leave, she texted me and told me she wasn't coming. The reason she gave me was just that she didn't feel like it. I called her, confused and hurt. I told her how much it meant to me, and she responded with a flat, "I'm not doing this, Jake. I don't need the drama." My dad asked me where she was, and I had to lie and tell him she had gotten sick. The shame and embarrassment of having to cover for her, knowing she simply didn't care enough to show up, was a deeply humiliating blow. This wasn't just a prank anymore. This was a deliberate attempt to hurt me and isolate me from the people who mattered most. And it was working. The emotional abuse, the gaslighting, the cold shoulders, none of it was enough to make me walk away. I was in too deep, clinging to the ghost of a relationship I thought was real. I was a man in a desert, hallucinating an oasis. My mind was consumed by a single desperate mission, to find the old Sarah, the one who loved me, and bring her back. I became a full-time detective of my own relationship, searching for clues, for a hint of her affection, for any sign that the person I knew was still there. This desperation turned me into someone I barely recognized. The quiet, confident architect was replaced by a frantic, pleading stranger. I started to believe that my love, if I just showed enough of it, could somehow break through her cold exterior. I tried everything I could think of to remind her of what we once had. My first big attempt was a letter. I spent an entire weekend writing it. I chose my words carefully, trying to strike the perfect balance between showing my love and not sounding too desperate. I filled it with specific memories, like the road trip where we got lost, or the time we built a blanket fort in my living room. I wrote about my fears, about how much I loved her, and about my absolute belief in our future. I folded it carefully, sealed it, and drove to her apartment. I tucked it under her doormat, my heart pounding with a ridiculous amount of hope. I genuinely believed that once she read my words, she would remember all the good times and everything would go back to normal. A week passed. I didn't hear a single word about it. I finally couldn't take it anymore and sent her a text, asking if she had gotten my letter. Her reply was a single 3-word message that felt like a slap in the face. She told me, "Thanks for the letter, Jake." No emotion. No comment on what I had poured my heart out about. Just a cold acknowledgement that she had received my plea, a plea she clearly didn't care about. The flowers came next. I remembered a time she had complained about feeling unappreciated at work. So I decided to do something to make her feel special. I went to a florist and ordered a huge bouquet of her favorite peonies. I bought a fancy latte from her favorite coffee shop and drove to her office. I was a nervous wreck. I stood outside the doors, waiting for her to come out, my heart pounding in my chest. I envisioned her face lighting up when she saw me, her eyes sparkling with a spark of the old love. I waited for over 20 minutes. When she finally emerged, she looked annoyed to see me, as if I was an inconvenience, a forgotten appointment. She gave me a brief, forced smile. She took the flowers and the latte, told me she had to get back to work, and then just walked away. She never even invited me inside. I stood there watching her disappear behind the glass doors, the hope I had held onto shattering into a million pieces. The humiliation of being so easily dismissed, of putting myself out there only to be treated like a delivery guy, was a deeply painful blow. But the most painful, most humiliating memory of all was the ramen. It was a cold Friday night, and I couldn't get the thought of her out of my head. I decided that maybe a small, nostalgic gesture would be enough. I went to our favorite ramen place, the one we used to go to on cold winter nights, and I got her a piping hot bowl of her favorite. I drove to her place, my car filled with the nostalgic scent of ginger and soy sauce. I stood on her doorstep, my stomach filled with hope. I had a whole little speech planned about how this reminded me of our early days, but I didn't even get the chance to say it. When she opened the door, she looked at me with a bored expression like I was a salesman. I told her I brought her some food and thought we could watch a movie. She took the ramen, thanked me in that cold, distant way, and then told me she had plans. She didn't invite me in. She didn't offer to reschedule. She didn't even look at me. She just closed the door and left me standing there, defeated and completely empty. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The ramen I had bought, the gesture I had hoped would rekindle something, was just a hot container in my hands. The sight of it now filled me with shame. I got back in my car and just sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, trying to recognize the person I had become. The person who had been reduced to begging for scraps of affection from someone who was so clearly done with him. That night, lying in bed staring at my phone, I finally broke. It wasn't a sudden burst of anger. It was a slow, quiet collapse of my spirit. I had been fighting a war on my own, a war that she had no intention of winning or losing. She had already left, she just hadn't physically moved out of my life yet. All the emotional energy I had been pouring into this one-sided battle had left me with nothing. I realized I was destroying myself, trying to save something she clearly didn't want to save. In that moment, I made a choice. It was a quiet, profound resolution. I wasn't going to beg for her love anymore. I was going to give it all to myself. I put my phone down and turned it off. I stopped initiating contact. I stopped checking her social media. I decided that from that day forward, every ounce of emotional energy I'd been pouring into a one-sided relationship would be reinvested in me. I was done being the silent, accommodating boyfriend. It was time for me to become the protagonist of my own life again. The first few weeks were incredibly hard. I felt the phantom limb of our relationship every time I went to text her, every time I saw something that reminded me of her. There were days I would just sit in silence, mourning a relationship that was still technically alive. But I pushed through. I took the first small, painful step. I started going to the gym, not just for a workout, but as a way to burn off the emotional frustration and sadness. My mind was still in turmoil, but for the first time in months, my body was doing something productive. It was the beginning of my long, hard journey to rebuild myself from the ground up, to find my worth again, and to remember who I was before she started her cruel game. The decision to stop chasing Sarah was the most painful, but also the most freeing choice I'd ever made. It felt like I had finally cut a rope that was tying me to a sinking ship. The initial loneliness was immense, a heavy, suffocating silence in my apartment where her presence used to be. But with every day that passed, that silence began to feel less like an absence and more like an opportunity. It was a blank canvas, and I was finally ready to start painting my own life again. I threw myself completely into my work. My architecture firm had a new urban redevelopment project on the table, and I took it on with a vengeance. I spent late nights at my desk, sketching, designing, and pouring every ounce of my energy into creating something meaningful. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about the tangible act of building something beautiful to counter the feeling that my life had been torn down. The late nights became my sanctuary. The more I focused on my designs, the less space there was in my mind for the hurt she had caused. My colleagues who had seen me at my lowest were impressed by my renewed focus. My project became a success, earning me recognition and putting my firm on the map in a way I never thought possible. My career wasn't just a job anymore, and it was a testament to my resilience. The physical transformation happened in tandem with the professional one. I started going to the gym every morning. I wasn't doing it to get revenge or to make her regret her decision. I was doing it for me. I needed to feel strong again, both physically and mentally. With every rep, every run, I felt the anger and the sadness slowly being replaced by a sense of accomplishment and clarity. My body got stronger and my mind got quieter. The constant anxiety that had plagued me for months finally began to fade. My social life also took a turn for the better. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the relationship, and I made a conscious effort to build new, healthy friendships. I found people who were genuinely interested in my life, who listened when I spoke, and who supported me without expecting anything in return. I started to see what a real friendship looked like, and the contrast with my old life was staggering. It was during this period of rebuilding that I met Chloe. I wasn't looking for anyone, not even close. My heart was still healing, and I was so focused on my own journey that dating was the last thing on my mind. I met her at an industry conference for sustainable urban design. I was giving a presentation on a new project, and she was in the audience. Her questions were thoughtful, insightful, and challenged me in a way I hadn't been challenged in years. She was a rising star in her own right, an incredibly talented landscape architect. I remember my first conversation with her. I'd never felt so seen. She was funny, brilliant, and possessed a quiet confidence that was captivating. I found myself telling her about my passions, about my dreams, and about the struggles I had faced. She listened, truly listened, and I felt a sense of connection I hadn't realized I'd been missing for so long. She didn't play games. There was no distance, no emotional cold shoulder, no silent tests. There was just honesty, mutual respect, and a genuine interest in each other's lives. Our relationship grew slowly and naturally, built on a foundation of shared interests and mutual support. I learned what it felt like to be with someone who wanted to build me up, not tear me down. I found myself smiling more, laughing more, and feeling a sense of peace I thought I had lost forever. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was falling for a person who would never, ever play games with my heart. She was a partner in every sense of the word, a beautiful, brilliant woman who loved me for who I was, not for who I pretended to be. I was finally truly happy. I remember one particular afternoon, Chloe and I were at the park, sitting on a bench, just talking. It was a simple moment, but it was perfect. The sun was shining, we were holding hands, and I felt a sense of overwhelming gratitude. My life had a peace and a joy that I never thought I would find again. My world was so full, so complete, that the memory of Sarah and her cruel games felt distant, like a bad dream from a long, long time ago. I was completely unaware that the dream was about to come back to haunt me. My life had found a new, beautiful rhythm. My career was thriving, my friendships were genuine, and my relationship with Chloe was a source of pure happiness. My world was so full, so complete, that the memory of Sarah and her cruel games felt distant, like a bad dream from a long, long time ago. My focus wasn't on the past, it was on the future, on the incredible things Chloe and I were building together. I was completely unaware that the dream was about to come back to haunt me. The confrontation happened at a prestigious industry networking event. It was a formal gala for local architects and designers, celebrating a few of our firm's recent projects. I was standing alone for a moment, taking a breath after a long conversation, when I felt a presence beside me. My heart gave a little flutter, not from excitement, but from a cold, distant shock. I turned, and there she was. Sarah. She looked different. Her vibrant energy was gone. She seemed smaller, a bit less sure of herself than I remembered. She had a look of genuine surprise on her face when she saw me, as if she couldn't believe this confident, successful man was the same person she had left behind. The first thing she said to me was, "Jake? Is that really you? You look amazing." I gave her a polite smile and told her it was good to see her. She asked me if we could talk privately for a moment. Chloe was a short distance away, but I knew she was perceptive enough to notice the shift in my mood and give me space. I told Sarah that we could talk, and I led her to a quieter corner of the room. She started rambling about how she had been going through a tough time, how she'd made some mistakes, and how much she regretted things. My mind was completely still, just waiting for the inevitable. And then she dropped the bombshell. She laughed a little, a nervous, almost breathless sound as she confessed her intentions. She told me, okay, so this is going to sound crazy, but it was all a prank, Jake. Every single bit of it. The distance, the coldness, everything. It was a test to see how much you really loved me. To see if you'd fight for me. My mind went completely still. A prank? The months of pain, the nights of crying myself to sleep, the self-doubt, the desperation, all a prank. I just stood there staring at her without saying a word. She continued, a relieved smile spreading across her face. She said, and you totally passed. So we can just pick up where we left off, right? I mean, now you know how much I mean to you. The audacity of it was breathtaking. I wasn't angry, I was just empty. The woman standing in front of me was a child who had set a fire and was now surprised that the building was gone. I just calmly told her, I'm not sure you understand the depth of what you did. What you put me through wasn't a prank. It was emotionally abusive. And to be honest, I've moved on. Her smile completely vanished. She started to say something, but just then I saw Chloe approaching. She had a calm, kind smile on her face, and her presence was a warm, loving anchor, a beautiful contrast to the cold storm I had just been in. She walked right up to me and gently placed a hand on my arm, her eyes filled with warmth. It was in that moment that I realized Sarah was completely out of my mind, and Chloe was the only one in my heart. I turned my body completely to face Chloe, a genuine, loving smile spreading across my face. I looked at Sarah and said, "Sarah, this is Chloe. Chloe, this is Sarah. She's my girlfriend." I went on to tell Sarah, "Chloe is everything I never knew I needed. She's beautiful inside and out. She's kind, supportive, understanding, and more loving than I ever thought possible." The color drained from Sarah's face. All her manipulative bravado, all her confident cruelty, just crumbled. She saw a man who had not only survived her prank, but had thrived. She saw a man who was happy, fulfilled, and loved. And she saw the woman who truly cherished him, a woman who would never, ever play games with his heart. Sarah said nothing more. She simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, a ghost of her former self. I'm not angry at Sarah anymore. I pity her, honestly. She lost something real, something beautiful, because she thought she could manipulate emotions for a cheap thrill. And in doing so, she pushed away the person who genuinely loved her. My journey through that darkness taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. True love isn't about tests or games. It's about trust, respect, and a deep, genuine connection. It's about knowing your worth and finding someone who knows it too. My path wasn't easy, but it led me to a better version of myself and to a relationship built on a foundation of honesty and love. A love that isn't a game, but a gift. I learned that you shouldn't have to fight to be loved. The right person will see your worth without having to test it. So if you're out there and you're going through something similar, or if someone is treating you like you don't matter, please don't feel defeated. Use that pain as fuel to rebuild yourself. Don't be afraid to walk away from people who don't appreciate you. Your worth is inherent, not granted by others. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living a life so genuinely fulfilling, so truly successful, that they can only look on and wish they had seen it all along. And by then, you'll be too busy shining to even notice. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around for my story. If this video resonated with you and you're thinking, wow, this guy's emotional roller coaster is way more dramatic than my Tuesday, then do me a huge favor. Hit that big thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to ring that little notifications bell so you don't miss out on what I'm sharing next. Also, I want to hear from you. Have you ever gone through a difficult relationship or had a friend who didn't treat you well? How did you overcome it? Share your life experiences in the comments below. Let's build a community where we support each other and remember that no matter what, we're all capable of finding true happiness after a storm. Your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.